Hello to all my fellow best bakers out there. This best baker tip is maybe one that you've seen before in my written form blog post. I link to it probably more than any other blog post in my whole entire site, and it's when I get the question, how long do I bake it? And my answer is always until it's done. And I do understand that for beginning bakers, well, how the heck do you know when it's done? And that's why I asked you, and people get mad at me when I link to that post. But if you do read the whole thing, it is really very informative, and I'm actually going to make you read it here today. But I'm going to, sort of clip in some visuals, of course, on how to know when a brownie is done, because that's a certain way of doing it. How to know when your cakes are done, because that's another little other way of doing it. How to know when your cheesecakes are done, because that's also some different methods. There's, different ways of knowing depending on what it is that you're making. And I just don't really like to rely on a hard and fast time that a recipe might say. Recipe times that are listed on my recipes anyway are really just guidelines. I mean, it's always kind of like 15 to 18 minutes or 18 to 25 minutes. Like, that's a pretty big window. There's some recipes where I'm like, exactly this many minutes, because if you don't do it, like, the whole world's going to end. But that's really few and far between when the recipes get that exact. And even still, everybody's oven is different. There's so many different factors that play into how to know when your stuff is done that I don't always like to give just like a straight up answer. So I urge you guys to read my blog post first of all, but check out, we'll just show you how to know brownies, cheesecakes, cake layers, things like that. The standard tests that I use, the Toothpick Test, the Jiggle Test for the cheesecake, and then the springy to the touch when you press the center for cake layers. So one comment that I recently got on my Facebook page that I was really happy about, because I shared this blog post, the Until It's Done blog post, and she was kind of annoyed when I directed her to that blog post in the first place, because people just want the answer, right? But the really cool thing that she said was that even though she was annoyed in the beginning because I didn't just give her a straight up time and answer, she is so much of a better baker now because I have forced her to really learn how to know when your stuff is done. And that's a really good sign of a really great baker, guys, is to not rely on times, but to rely on your sense of touch and sight and even smell. If your cakes are burning, you definitely know they are overdone. But anyway, so check out this little clips of how to know when your stuff is done, and definitely read my blog post. And thanks for being part of my Best Baker Club. You guys are awesome, and I will see you next time.
My favorite way to know if cake layers are done is by a simple method that I call the finger test. By gently pressing in the center of the cake as it is near the end of its baking time, it should spring back rather than leave an indentation. If there is an indent, well, that just means that it needs a few more minutes to bake. But if it springs back like this one here, you are good to go. Another way is the toothpick test, and if the toothpick comes out with moist crumbs, then great, that's a good sign it's done. Raw batter, obviously it needs more time, and, well, no crumbs. Yikes, dry cake. For brownies, it is definitely the toothpick method all the time, since a moist crumb brownie means that it is perfect. Again, if the toothpick is dry, then your brownie will also be dry, and raw batter on the toothpick, well, you know the drill. For cheesecakes, though, it may take some practice and maybe an underbaked cheesecake or two before you actually get the feel for how to know when these babies are done. It is what I call the jiggle test. If the center jiggles like Jell-O, kind of like this, there is a difference between a liquid-looking center and a firm Jell-O one like I showed you here. So if the center and just the center jiggles like Jell-O, then you're good. I do like to shut off the oven at that point, leave the cheesecake inside to cool down for another 30 minutes, and, well, those are the basics of how to know when your cakes are done, and I hope you can get familiar with them rather than rely on exact times, and you will become a better baker, I assure you.